Ladies and gentlemen, this is the 12th and final round.
Right hand, Golovkin steps in and down he goes again. Unbelievable. Mayweather makes him pay. What a rookie mistake. A sensational left hook by De La Hoya.
It's facts. I'm the best. You know what I mean? Sometimes I don't want to believe it myself, but it's the truth. I'm the best. I'm going to show you how great I am.
From Southern California, this is the Last Round Podcast.
All right, so here at Fox Studios in Los Angeles, California, after the second Wilder Fury rematch press conference, which was interesting to me, but we have ESPN Steve Kim here on the Last Round Podcast. Thanks for coming on, Steve. Just your immediate reaction after. It's a pretty basic press conference, but what did you think of it?
Yeah, it's a little bit different. Most of these aren't in a television studio. I think they tried to soup it up a little bit. It's funny. I was actually told at the beginning of this by Bob. I remember when this fight was actually finalized that they weren't going to have much more than the promotional ads on the college football playoff games. I think there's a realization that even with two major platforms, two really big networks, and with modern technology, you still need to promote. I still believe that when you have an event of this nature, you got to pound the pavement. You got to shake hands, just like in a presidential debate or presidential election. You see every campaign, no matter who it is, and I'm not trying to make a political statement,
right.
But people still have to go out there and shake hands and kiss babies.
Right.
And, I thought this was pretty good. They got the ball rolling. You have two very big, bright personalities, and we're less than a month away. It'll be very interesting to see how this event does. I think that if you are a boxing fan that wants to see cross-promotional fights like, let's say, Spence Crawford within this year, you better hope this does well. And I'm not making a statement that everyone should buy it. I'm not going to tell you how to spend your money. But if the more successful this event is, the better it bodes, I think, for everyone involved.
I see that Eddie Hearn touched on in a recent iPhone interview that he said the press conference was called because of poor ticket sales.
I'll say this. If this event was sold out and the organizers felt like, man, we're tracking 2 million buys, you're right, they probably wouldn't do this. But, look, in my view, this event is so important because it'll really shape the future of the business and how it's run. Because let's be honest about this. If Top Rank and PBC and everyone involved, both networks, have a successful venture, they're going to say, wait a minute, let's keep going back to this well. Now, if this becomes Death Valley, we may never have this again.
Yeah.
And I believe this. The game of boxing is much better when people cooperate. Doesn't mean they have to do every show together. We don't need 15 cross co-promotions. You need about 2-3 more extra fights to happen. I've charted this for a very long time. If you go back to the Cold War, which I coined for Golden Boy and Top Rank, we lost fights like Abner Mars and Nonito Donaire. And there's probably 24 other fights of that nature that guys like us really wanted to see that have never come to fruition. And I think that's hurt the sport. It's eroded the credibility and also the interest. I think Fury Wilder, hopefully it could lead to eventually the winner getting Anthony Joshua.
Not immediately, isn't there a rematch clause?
Yeah, well, we'll see about that. I think they want to get past February 22nd first, but there's been too much incomplete non-history in the sport the last 10 to 15 years. I think that's something that really has to be eradicated.
Do you think it'll get anywhere near the estimated 4.6 million buys that Joe Tessitore decided?
I love Joe. Joe's my guy, but you know what they say, the bigger the number, the bigger the headline. I don't know if there's really a pay-per-view market anymore. That Canelo-Golovkin, those last two fights may have signaled the last two big pay-per-view events. We have to be very blunt about this. The modern technology is great on one hand, but also, look, there used to be a time when I grew up back in the olden days to get a pay-per-view for free, to steal it in essence, you had a black box. You had to do a lot to get a black box.
Exactly.
You had to know somebody at the cable company. You had to know the hookup. They had to make sure you didn't get caught. Now you just need to know the right URL and you've got a stream. I mean, we've come a long way from the days of Justin TV, where you got a virus that would shut down your computer in 3 months. Now these streams are like off the Mississippi River. I mean, and I'm a guy who pays for it. Honestly, I can get it written off. It's part of my business. I feel bad about it, and I watch everything, but it's so much easier to actually quote-unquote steal or pirate pay-per-views more than ever.
It is.
And so we have to, the undercard, it's not exactly revenge the rematches. The fights are, some are better than others. If they do, I would say between 1.2 million and 1.5 million, I think from a realistic standpoint, that would probably please everyone involved.
because obviously, we know that they're going to use some of that Super Bowl airtime for some publicity. Well, from what you've heard, are the fighters going to be Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder going to be at the Super Bowl?
I don't think they will be, but there will be ads, there will be signage.
Okay.
I've seen it. I watch some FS1. I watch a lot of ESPN, obviously. I've seen the commercials coming out of SportsCenter.
Right.
Speak for yourselves. The programming, I believe, was announced, I think, a couple of days ago, so you'll start to see an influx of that. All of that's going to help. And, they had a pretty good media turnout today. Guys like yourselves, we all do podcasts. We all have YouTube channels and accounts that we're going to get to. I've always said this, though. I really believe when people talk about a buzz of an event, I never understood when people talk about, well, there's no buzz for an event. It's like a month away. Guys, in my experience, the buzz for an event doesn't actually start till that week.
Fight week. Yeah.
And if you look at going back to ticket sales, I know a ticket broker, Jim Boone, has taught me a lot.
KO tickets.
Yeah, he'll say a lot of tickets are sold in the beginning and they're sold in the last 5 days. Everything in between, it kind of lags. It's the same thing for pay-per-views. Most of your pay-per-view buys, my understanding, are within the last couple of days. Nobody buys a pay-per-view like they would toilet paper at Costco. They're not stocking up on it early. People are literally hitting that pay button on that Friday or Saturday. So that's when it really matters. So it'll be interesting to see how this event does.
You think it cracks 1 million?
I think it does. I don't think it gets anywhere near 2, but again, I'm not a bean counter.
Right.
We're certainly going to be providing a lot of coverage on ESPN.com, and I've got some video that hopefully they'll be utilizing. But it's a good fight. Look, I did a column to begin the year at ESPN, the top 10 fights of the first 2 months. Wanted to extend to 3. They said go to February. And this was by far the number 1 fight. Not just in terms of the fighters, but also based on the importance of the fight, the event, the personalities involved. And I'm fascinated. Look, I don't think the first fight was a great fight. I think it was a very fascinating, interesting fight from a tactical standpoint and very dramatic at the end. But honestly, is it one of the top 20 heavyweight fights of all time? No, it wasn't even Dokes Holyfield or Bo Holyfield won. But I am very interested to see round 13, to see who has the advantage. Is it the tactical brilliance and the superiority of Tyson Fury, or is it the brute, unreal power that's just God-given of Deontay Wilder?
I mean, isn't it natural to expect essentially a similar fight where, for the first 11 rounds, it was just Tyson Fury essentially outboxing him?
But Deontay Wilder said something after the Louis Ortiz fight, which I thought really put it perfectly for him. And he understands I'm a flawed fighter, but I'm also very lethal. That he says, everyone that fights me has to be perfect for 36 minutes. I have to be perfect for 2 seconds. And that was a perfect summation of what he is and who he is as a fighter.
And I think looking at the Luis Ortiz fight, I think he's now become a lot calmer because he now realizes what he said, that he doesn't worry by being like 4, 5, 6 rounds down because he knows eventually he's going to get that one home run.
Yeah, it is.
You don't think that's a detriment to him, though?
It is, though, because you are playing with fire, because your margin of error is very small. Now, here's what I think is interesting. Tyson Fury says he's going to go for the second-round knockout. I don't believe that, but in my view, he's going to try to knock back Deontay a little bit more on his heels. He's not the stronger puncher, but he's physically stronger. He's a thicker guy. He's got stronger, bigger legs. Now, when Deontay Wilder punches, it's downhill momentum. He has to be on the ball of his feet coming forward. If you knock him back on his heels, he's not Ray Robinson against Carmen Basile. He's not going to throw a hook off his heels and knock somebody out. It's always that right hand, generally as he comes forward in a straight line. I would not be surprised to see Fury in spots be a little bit more aggressive. Now, is he playing with fire, being aggressive, and sticking to the pocket? He is, but most of the time when Wilder hits you with the right hand, it's always with the very long extension, for the most part. Fury might be thinking, maybe I need to smother him before he really gets that rocket ship going.
You've said in the past, and we've heard it, especially in the sport of boxing. There's boxing, and then there's heavyweight boxing. In your opinion, being in the game for as long as you've been, why is heavyweight boxing different from the rest?
Because I think, the general public, this is where an event or a fighter becomes big, is when the general public that doesn't watch every single fight like us, they'll watch it maybe once a month or maybe once or twice a year. Look, if you ask the general public, what is the weight limit of a junior welterweight or a bantamweight or a flyweight, they probably wouldn't really know.
Right.
But heavyweights resonate. We kind of know they're the biggest guys.
Right.
And it's been the game's glamour division going all the way back to John L. Sullivan. Then there was Jack Dempsey, Joe Louis, Rocky Marciano, Muhammad Ali. And then obviously Larry Holmes, Mike Tyson. So there's always been there is two sets of different businesses. There's no doubt about it. The heavyweight business is different because it's so readily recognizable. They're big guys.
Right.
So when you see two bantamweights, no matter how great they are, I think a lot of people kind of look, I don't want to say novelty act, but they look at it as two small guys.
Right.
Heavyweights, there's something like, wow, there's something very alluring about two above average sized humans that look a certain way hurling leather at each other. So I think that's where it really holds true that the heavyweight division is a little bit different.
Going back to what you said about Tyson's tactics, do you think it was correct for him to change from Ben Davidson to Sugar Hill with probably the biggest fight of his career coming up?
I think it's very questionable. I mean, nothing against Javen Hill. I've known him for years. Very competent trainer. He will not be a detriment, but I still remember being out there in Vegas late in October or November for the Deontay Wilder-Louis Ortiz rematch, and he was there. And he was scouting him on behalf of Tyson Fury, very intently watching, and I interviewed him a little bit. I had no clue. That thing hit like a ton of bricks to everybody. Right. And but there's a storyline. Javen Hill was there. Late, great uncle was Emmanuel Stewart, who had him in camp 10 years ago, 2009, came to Kronk. Right. Wanted to learn a little bit. And my understanding, if it wasn't for the distance in terms of travel and space, he would have been a Kronk fighter. You know, and Emmanuel Stewart was very prescient in this sense. He said a long time ago, I think it was an interview, you can get on YouTube, I think around 2012, he said there's two great young heavyweights, Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder.
Right. He was right on the money.
Yeah.
And then not only did he change trainers, but he also changed cutman. I mean, he went to probably arguably the best in the game with Stitch Duran, but Capetillo did.
He did. Look, sometimes it comes down to money. I don't really know that situation, but cutmen are not important. It's like car insurance. Right. It ain't important until you need it. Okay? That's just the way it is. And maybe they felt Capetillo was a little inexperienced. They got away with one. My understanding, he still has a very good relationship with Capetillo. I think he did a fundraiser at his gym for him a couple weeks ago in Vegas. But it will be interesting to see what difference, if any, does Javen Hill make. And Fury said to everyone a couple weeks ago at the original press conference, he wants to be a little bit more aggressive, wants to throw that Kronk right hand. So that's interesting. You know, they say you don't hook with the hooker. I wouldn't throw right hands with Deontay Wilder.
Right. And then real quickly, touching on Andy Ruiz, another heavyweight in the division, just split from his trainer, Manny Robles, and there's a rumor that he might be going with Teddy Atlas. You had Manny Robles on your show recently, and we talked about it just before we went on air for a little bit, but just tell our listeners what your take is.
You could see that coming. I even tweeted right after the fight, I said, I hope Manny Robles does not get scapegoated. And the reason why I tweeted that is I felt it's going to happen. You could just tell.
Right.
I felt very bad for Manny. He was not in a position to quit. You work your whole life for a payday of that nature. And in many respects, in a situation like that, a trainer is held hostage by a fighter. They really are.
Right.
Unless they're Freddie Roach and they have $50 million that they've already made. And at that point, and I explained this to Manny a couple weeks ago as we talked about his situation. He had just gotten paid. And I said, Manny, you did the right thing. Because at that point, what a trainer's getting paid for in a situation like that, you're getting paid to cover up and lie.
Right.
Because there's no trainers ever going to tell you 2 weeks before fight, what a terrible camp we're having. Bet the life savings on the other guy. But I think Manny comes out of this looking very good. He's handled this with incredible class. He's a grinder. He's a hard-working boxing lifer. I have a lot of admiration for Manny. I think any fighter that has him is very lucky to have them. Now, for Andy, I don't know what to say. I look at some of these videos he's doing, the YouTube channel, some of the Fashion Nova hits that he does. There seems to be a lack of self-awareness over just, like, right now his name is Mud.
Right.
I mean, like, he almost laughed it off like he didn't train. And I remember after that fight, especially from the Mexican fan base that was all in, there was visceral anger over that effort that he put in. And I don't know. I always thought, or I believe now, that his victory was just getting the first Joshua fight, because that gave him $4 to $5 million.
Right.
That's hitting the lottery. Well, unexpectedly, he won the Super Bowl lotto.
Right.
And then he had to go to the rematch. I mean, look, think about this. If you're the PBC standpoint and Andy Ruiz personally, you're this close. If you beat Anthony Joshua again, you're bigger than Canelo.
Right.
You're the guy making $35-40 million. You're the guy every fight's a pay-per-view. You're knocking Canelo off Cinco de Mayo in the second, third week of Mexican Independence Day weekend in September. Now he's Buster Douglas 2.0.
Right.
So I don't know what's going to go on. I mean, Look, I was told by one of his people that work with him, they expect him back in June or July. He's going to meet with Freddie personally in February. It's going to happen within a week or 2 or 3. They're going to talk. And look, I would love to be a fly on the wall of that conversation, because everything that Teddy has said about Andy on TV, he'll say it right to his face.
Right.
I know Teddy.
It's a straight shooter.
And if Teddy does not like... See, here's the thing. You have to understand. Teddy is interviewing Andy. Andy is not interviewing Teddy.
Right.
I'm just telling you, I know Teddy. Teddy's one of my dear friends. He's taught me a lot about this business. I was very fortunate as I got into this in the late 90s that I got to know Teddy. He's taught me a lot. But I know Teddy. He is not a player's coach. He is Sinatra. He does it his way.
What do you think about the take that Andy Ruiz's father told Manny that it was Al Heyman's decision?
Don't believe it for 1 second. And I know people that have had fighters with Al Heyman that say that he's not that much of a puppet master. In my view, and I think even Manny believes this, that was a cover, that was an alibi, and that was a front. You know, look, Andy didn't have enough, I don't say guts, but he didn't tell Manny himself that he was going to let him go. And Manny had been trying to reach out to Manny since they got back from Saudi Arabia. So I don't believe it. No one else believes that it was really Al Heyman's call.
Right.
I don't.
And then real quickly, Ryan Garcia's fighting Valentine's Day, of course. At
he's a heartthrob. I'm sure. Well, I want to see if all the Betty Boobops that follow him on Instagram will pay $25, $50 for a ticket. And that's a lot of money for a high schooler. Seriously, back in my day, I don't remember spending $50 for anything in high school.
Right.
I didn't have $50.
Yeah, I didn't either. That's like a month. That's like 2 months worth of allowance for me back then. I mean, even counting for inflation. But look, I think this is the year where he's going to show if he's a real fighter. We know he's a social media star.
Right.
We're going to see if he can fight. Fonseca doesn't have enough for him, but by the half of the year, he's talking more and more about Tank, and I'm thinking, okay, I'd like to see it. But it's an event that I'll go to. It's the first kind of major fight in our area, in Southern California, so I'm going to have fun covering it. I would like to see what Linares has left. A lot of talk about those two squaring off. So, but again, going back to my original point, let's see if social media following actually translate to box office success, because I do think there's a difference. It costs you nothing to hit the follow button.
Yeah.
Now, will you pay $100 to see the guy perform?
Right.
Big difference.
Do you think that if it wasn't on Valentine's Day, maybe like the week later, ticket sales?
That's a great... Look, I don't like Friday night shows in L.A.
Right.
Because you have to, like, when Danny Roman fought T.J. Doney last year, I thought that was a great show. Remember, Rungvisai had the war with Estrada. That, I don't think there's any doubt. It absolutely affected the gate on a Friday night. We had an NBA playoff game right down the street at the Staples. I think the Clippers were playing. The Dodgers had a game. Right there, that's 70,000 people that aren't going to go to your fight.
Right.
Or whatever percentage were on the fence. Friday nights are tough. It really isn't. Remember, this fight's not in L.A., it's in Anaheim. So for a guy like me, I have to make that a whole day thing.
Right.
Like, I'm not leaving at 4 o'clock unless I want to catch the post-fight press conference.
Right.
So Friday nights are a little bit tough in L.A. because of the time zones. Everything's really about the Eastern time standard in terms of when you start an event. So we'll see. If they can get 7,000 to 8,000, I would consider that a success.
Well, Steve, we appreciate your time. We know they're going to grab you soon here to do your thing. But, you got the 3 Knockdown World podcast with Mario Lopez. Everybody can obviously find your work on ESPN and all that stuff. We appreciate you jumping on.
Absolutely, guys. Anytime. Great job when you got part.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks.
Thanks for supporting and listening to the show. Follow us at The Last Round 12 on social media. Rate, review, and subscribe. This is The Last Round Podcast.